Okay, now you can hear me. I swear. Okay, so I have this feeling a new computer's in my near future. I want this one here. Okay, you can hear me. You can see the screen. Yes. Yes, good. We're in business. Okay, except I'm not taping. Let me go back. Oh, I am. Good. It's a good thing this isn't my first class ever given because no one would ever join again. Okay, let's try this again. So we said that there are multiple parts to this idea of tshuva, of this tshuva gedola. One, it has to be tshuva mi'ahava, it has to be tshuva from love. Number two, you see the little number I put here, me'umka deliba, it has to come from the depths of the heart. Number three, ba'ava rabba, it has to be deep love, a great love. Chashika v'nefesh shokeka ledovka bo yiparach. It also has to be a feeling, a yearning, a desire to connect to God. And that there has to be this thing, this almost this thirsting, and nefesh is your neshama is thirsting to reconnect with Hashem, as a parched land is parched, just thirsting for water. Okay, sounds very nice. What's he talking about? So let's read what Rav Steindl says, and go from there. Shi tshuva me'ahava. What does that mean? First of all, in the very basic level, tshuva zo tzricha lihiyot me'ahava davka velo me'yir'a b'chol darga shehi. So this first statement of tshuva me'ahava is kind of like a koteret, like a headline, that this tshuva has to come from ahava. Remember, we talked about this already, and we're going to talk in depth later in the book about ahavat Hashem, love of God. We're serving Hashem because of yirat Hashem, being in awe, or more in this case, fear of God. He says the kind of tshuva we're talking about now, which is the goal is to eradicate the neshama's scarring and the body's scarring from having eaten food or done anything that wasn't l'shem shamayim, even though it was 100% mutar to do, has to be done out of ahavat Hashem, love of Hashem, and not yirat Hashem, not because of fear. Okay, and the next step. Umka deliba me omek halev, it has to come from the depths of the heart. Omek halev hu ma she'adam rotzeh be'emet. The depths of one's heart is what a person truly wants. Adam rotzeh dvarim gam bechitzoniyut halev. There are things that externally we may say we want. Avol yesh havdel ben hadvarim harabim she'adam rotzeh la'asot u'ben mashu rotzeh be'emet. There are differences. Think about yourself. There are things in life you say I really want, but things deep, deep down that you really want that are more important and valuable to you. In the depths of your heart. There are thousands and thousands of people who will say, I want to learn, I want to daven, I want to do mitzvot, but they don't feel it in their kishkas, as we say. They don't feel it. It's like, I know I'm supposed to daven. I just yesterday was having a conversation with some guy, probably didn't put on tefillin for the last 6 months. He's having terrible financial situation. He says, I can't even feel connected to God right now. So of course we had a nice little discussion about that. But he says, I know I'm supposed to. Okay, I know I'm supposed to put on tefillin. It's not like he says, I don't need to put on tefillin. I know I'm supposed to. Okay, that's a ratzon, but it's not internal. It's not coming from deep in the heart. Ilu haya mutar lo, if it would be permissible for this person, maybe he'd want something else besides davening. But what he really wants, though, we call from the depths of his heart. It's a tshuva that the person really feels it viscerally that they want to do. I know I do things wrong. I imagine that some of you may do something wrong in your lives. Maybe. Unless you're all tzaddikim, which would be awesome. So you know intellectually you need to do tshuva. By the way, you don't have to wait for Elul and Tishrei. You can do it today. I know I have to do tshuva for things. But it's more, let's say the way he's explained, like it's service. Not like it's a driving force necessarily during my day. It has to be it has to be part of who you are. For example, the way you feel, how you feel love, let's say, for a spouse, for a child, for a sibling, it comes from the depths. It's who you are. This kind of tshuva is not, oh, you changed your clothes and now you've done your due diligence. He becomes a different person with this kind of tshuva. That's step one. Two, has to be ahava rabbah, great love. Ahava rabbah hi shehi rabbah me'ahava tiv'it. We have, all of us, have a natural instinct to love. And usually we talk about parent, child, sibling. It's a natural instinct. This goes even above and beyond that. It's even greater than one's life. It's that compared to it, there's no other importance, no importance to this person's life. The idea of b'chol me'odecha. What does that mean? It's the love of with all your might. The concept of, I'm just paraphrasing, willing to give the love to giving up your life for God. Now, that's a hard idea to grasp sometimes. So I'll put it in human terms. Chas v'shalom, a person's in the following situation. They're standing with their kid at the mall, and the kid is in front of them. God forbid someone takes a gun and starts to aim at them. What's the instinct of the parent? Immediately protect the child. It's automatic, because that love, you're going to take the bullet for that child, not you. A parent's going to take a bullet for that child to save that child's life, because their life is supreme. That's the kind of love we're talking about here. One to do kiddush shem shamayim, to be mekadosh shem shamayim, to moser nefesh, which we're going to talk about more in depth later. That's another step. What does that mean? To cling to God, to yearn for God. This kind of ahava, this kind of love, and this kind of tshuva. What does that mean? באופן שבו אדם חושק בדברים בעולם הזה, בכל הלהט הראשוני שיש לתאווה הגשמית. Think about the thing you desire the most in the world. Could be a person, could be an object, could be whatever it might be. That extreme desire, that need, that pull, is that kind of idea when it comes to Adi of Hashem. We'll read this story too. It's a sweet story, but maybe it's from Barditchev. I'll just kind of paraphrase. But the night of Sukkot, the night before, like the first night of Sukkot, he didn't close his eyes even for a minute, because he was so excited that the next day he was going to take his etrog and make a bracha. All that night, the etrog was sitting in a glass box right next to him. And Rabbi Yitzchak could look at it, was thinking and was waiting when the morning would come and he could make a bracha on it. When the morning came, he couldn't hold himself back and he ran to the etrog. He shoved his hand through the glass window of this box. He cut his hands up and he took out the etrog. I'm picking up over here. He's viro. It was like this change, that what took over him, this action was, we know intellectually, you don't shove your hand through glass unless you're trying to save somebody or yourself. But this was the different, his entire neshama, his nefesh elokit, his godly soul took over. Like certain people may have this extreme desire for certain things in this world, Lo hayta tavat lemitzvot. He had the same extreme desire for mitzvot, to do mitzvah. He says that's the kind of chashika desire one has to have in order to cleanse themselves of the damage, again in quotes, done to their neshama, to their bodies, by using something mutar, but not raising it to the next level, which we all have the option to do with almost every single thing we have. And finally, what does that mean? The benefit of this kind of ahava, okay, we did this. Let me explain. That kind of extreme love, that kind of desire, that kind of thirst. You're running a marathon, and it's however many kilometers, and you are 3/4 of the way through, you've run out of water, you have nobody passing out water, you know you have to get to that finish line, and you're running, and you are the thirst is overwhelming. That's the thirst he's talking about. his desire to want to do tshuvat Hashem. This sounds like a massive, massive menu of things we have to do in order to overcome the Rosha made on us when not raising something to the proper level. So you have to hold on to that for a little while until we really get back and explore this more in depth later in the book. But the point from this particular chapter of chapter 7 or Perek Zion, see, I have the wrong screen here. Let me share for a minute. That this chapter dealt with things that are kosher, actions that are kosher, speech that is kosher, thoughts that are kosher, but just were not elevated. Most people will have a very hard time on a consistent basis to do any of that, to constantly elevate, So just like those of you here that are in the Siyat Yesharim class, you know that I also have this concept, I've mentioned this, that when you get to a certain chapter, in this case, chapter 12 in Siyat Yesharim, it sounds like it's, and he even says it's for Yechidim, it's for just individuals. There, in that book, at least you can strive for certain things. But we have to remember, what was the opening? I'm not going to show you the slide. The opening of the page, right? The front page of the book said, let's get to it. I'll read it to you again. Okay, it says, it's based on the pasuk, Ki karov elecha davar meod beficha ubilvavcha la'asoto. It's not just that what he's telling you in this book can be done. It's attainable. It's attainable for your thought, speech, and action. And it's also me'od, exceedingly attainable. You mean to tell me, after all I just said so far tonight, that this is exceedingly attainable? Right? That's a rhetorical question. So again, as has been since the beginning of the book, we're raising many questions that soon, with an ish, we'll start seeing some of these answers that we raised all the way at the beginning of the book, but you have to hang in there. Let's take a look. Let's see if it's this screen here. Oops, sorry. Hopefully it's this. Share. Yeah, okay, now I have to just make this bigger. Now, I have a different, so I made it a little bit nicer. Instead of the original printing of the book of Tanya, I now have it with the kudot, and I'll make it a little bit bigger because I can see some of you are struggling to see. Okay. Chapter 8, Perek Chet, picks up where chapter 7 left off, but with a switch, with a twist. We said that a person can elevate things that are klipat noga. He spoke about food. He spoke about thought, speech, and action. I could be sitting here thinking about what a nice day it is. I can be speaking to somebody about the stock market. I don't know, which don't bother looking even. I can be eating that hamburger. All those things are perfectly fine and permissible. There's no lashon hara. I'm not thinking about things I shouldn't be thinking about. I'm eating food that is kosher, but we still can do something with that. We can elevate it. And once I've ingested it or I've done the act, we saw that there's a way after the fact to kind of correct that. What about when you eat something you're not allowed to eat? Okay, or you do something you're not allowed to do? An avera. Well, he's going to focus more on food right now. I mentioned to you that this perek coming up will sound a little bit, I don't want to use the words creepy, a little bit scary. But I have to clarify or qualify something before we begin. We're going to talk about 3 topics in this perek, in the first half of the perek. It's a short perek, but the first half of the perek will deal with 3 topics relating to how one can be cleansed from the impression left on one's soul and one's body from eating things that they're not supposed to eat. I'm not talking about you're gluten-free and you ate something gluten. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something you ate in the restaurant that's under the, what I call, some of you have heard me use this expression before. I've actually written an article about called the hechsher of the EEI. What's the hechsher of the EEI? I mentioned this in the Mesilat Yesharim. It's that everyone eats it. Okay. Oh, yeah, everyone eats there. Okay. No. I think I'm not Bisari anymore. It's only been, okay, it's been 2 hours. There are those who say, well, I'll wait 1 hour. Fine, I'll eat little chalavi now. I think that I did cook. It was more than 24 hours since I used that pot. I'll just use it. When we start, and then there's the times we just eat something we're not supposed to eat. Take a date and just pop it in your mouth after, you can't do that. The chances of finding bugs in certain foods is almost 100% guaranteed in X amount of product. You have to check your lettuce. You have to check your dates. You have to check your broccoli and cauliflower, almost impossible. Fresh, I'm talking about. By the way, if you're ever given a choice between eating a raw piece of broccoli without checking it or a ham sandwich, you should eat the ham sandwich, because the ham sandwich only has 1 isur, and eating 1 bug is 6 isurim. Well, let's assume you did. And even if it was by accident, it still left it did something to you, right? We talked about the concept before of what's called timtum halev. It is like it stops up the heart in a spiritual sense. I'm not talking about blocked and clogged arteries and stuff like that, but in a spiritual sense, the person has clogged arteries that when they ingest things that are not kosher. How do you cleanse yourself from that? Now, we saw in the last chapter that if you wanted to raise from klipat noga, he didn't do it. It went down to gimel klipot tuma, and then afterwards you say, I'm going to use the energy, the thought, or whatever, the speech, and retroactively you're going to use it and raise it to the point of being able to serve Hashem with it. Then retroactively you've cleansed yourself. When you do the proper tshuva as well, is another step. What about this? You ate treif. You ate something you're not supposed to eat. You had basar b'chalav. You had something that's not kosher, whatever it might be. So we're going to talk about 3 steps that a person goes through after they pass away. And in those 3 steps, some will go through 1, some will go through 2, some will go through 3, and some will go through none. Now, if that's not mysterious enough, it's also the reason I'm giving this introduction is that it sounds like these are 3 different types of punishments for the individual. So let me kind of give you a little bit of a commercial announcement. It's going to sound like really far-fetched. This is going to sound like I'm coming out of left field. We know that during Chol HaMoed, generally speaking, you don't do laundry. What's the reason for that? Because how did they used to do laundry? You didn't throw it into a machine. You had to take it. You had to beat it against the rock. You had to scrub it, whatever it was. And it was mamish work. And during Chol HaMoed, you don't work. Along came the advent of the washing machine. And I know that I can tell you factually, I know there are some poskim will say, yes, you can use washing machine and during Chol HaMoed, you could wash because there's no work involved whatsoever. For kids, there's no question. Of course you can do it. There's no question on that. And others will say, no, look, there's a concept in halacha that if you no longer have the reason for an isur, it still exists, even if the reason's gone. So if you were standing watching somebody wash clothes in the 16th century, you go down to the river, let's make it really rustic. You go and you watch from a distance. You don't know what it means to wash clothes. And you see someone taking clothes and they're beating it against the rock, and they're taking a stone, scrubbing it, they're beating it against the rock. And like, what are they doing? They're trying to destroy the fabric. They're trying to destroy that. What are they doing? That might be your perspective. But what is it that they're doing? They're cleaning it. They're cleaning it in order so they could be able to wear it again. So I want you to keep that in mind as if we get to all 3. I don't think we're going to get to all 3 tonight, but let's just, I might get to all 3, at least in a general statement, and then we'll go into depth of Bezrat Hashem in the next class. So let's get into it. Furthermore, when it comes to foods that are prohibited, let me look at my book here. Things that a person eats that are called isur. What does that mean? What if a person ate something treif and had in mind they're going to eat it because they want to have strength to serve Hashem? And what they do, that because of the strength they got from eating and from drinking that food that was not kosher, they were able to daven better and they had strength to serve Hashem. Ein hachiyut sheba ola umitlabeshet batevot haTorah va'tfilah kamo heter. Remember, we said that the person's food has it gives him the chiyut, the life sustenance, and the power and the strength to do the mitzvah, to do the Torah. It actually infuses the Torah with more power and higher level kedusha and raises it. That doesn't happen at all. It has no effect, even if he does it l'shem shemaim. Why? Mipnei isura b'idei asitra achra mishalosh klipot hatmiot. You can't take something treif and make it positive. You can't take something treif, that's not something not kosher, that's gimel klipot hatmeot, that's the lowest level of tumah, and try to make it so that you make it holy in order to serve Hashem. That's stealing money and giving to tzedakah, right? That is a mitzvah haba ba'avera. Doing a mitzvah by doing an avera to get to the mitzvah. It's a zero. It doesn't count. It doesn't do any good. Vafilu yisud rabanan, and he says, wait a minute. You might think, okay, basar v'chalav chas v'sham. We're not going to eat basar v'chalav, meat and milk together, but something that is asur midrabanan, it's quote only the rabbis made it prohibited. Don't think that, oh well, maybe I'll do that because I'll be able to have a raising up. I can have a mind. No, why? Shechamurim divrei sofrim yoter midivrei Torah. I'm not going to get into the details right now, but sometimes a prohibition by the rabbis has on a level of even more severity than something the Torah prohibits. Lachein, therefore, gama yitzara v'choach hamitavel lidvarim asurim. This is going to kind of shake you up a little bit. A person who has a desire for things that are prohibited, who shed mishedim nuchraim, comes from a non-Jewish Yetzer Hara. A shed is a demon. It comes from the Yetzer Hara of the non-Jewish world that comes to you, and that non-Jewish Yetzer Hara comes to you when you have what's causing it is these desires that you're not supposed to have. My Rebbe used to call us the frum Yetzer Hara, the religious Yetzer Hara. Look, I'm gonna go help somebody do something because if I'm helping them, then I don't have to do this other mitzvah. Because osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. When I'm involved in one mitzvah, I'm exempt from doing another mitzvah. So let me do this cheapo one here, so to speak, the easy one, so I don't have to do this hard one over there. Let's go the frum Yetzer Hara. You try to play games with yourself. But when a person does something, you have a desire for something that's mutar. I want that hamburger, right? I want that whatever it might be, and you want lemalot ta'avato, and all you want to do is not raise it to the kedusha, but not even change it from klipat noga, but you just want to eat. That's hushed mishedina yudaim. That comes from the Jewish Yetzer Hara. Because we know that something that is permitted, we just saw this, we just talked about for the last half hour, you can still retroactively raise it up to the proper level. Before it goes back to the level of kedusha, when you've eaten it, when it's just sitting there, or before you've eaten it, or when you've eaten it, you haven't had the proper intention. It's kind of floating, so to speak, in what its level is. This is the sitra acha, is the gimel klipot hatmeot. All this is his introduction, really, to this chapter. First thing he tells us, number one, there's a big difference between ingesting kosher food and non-kosher food in what it does to us. And it also tells us the cause of eating the kosher and the non-kosher food is different. One is the non-Jewish Yetzer Hara, and one is the Jewish Yetzer Hara. I'm not going to go into, there's, I'm sure, very long theses written about this whole topic. I'm not going to get into that because I really want to get to this next paragraph and a half. V'gam achar kach hareshimu mimenu nishar davuk baguf. Afterwards, after eating something not kosher, or eating something kosher, but not having properly elevated it, the roshem, the impression is still left on the body. Liot ki mikol ma'achal u'mashke nasa techef basar dam basar mi basaro. We know, we said this before, that as soon as you eat, that becomes a part of you, literally. Therefore, how do we clear the air? How do we get that taken care of if we didn't do the right thing? In other words, a person passes away after 120 years, and they're going to go before the Kisei Kavod. And for those of you who are young enough to remember, in the 70s, when they had all these anti-smoking commercials and campaigns, one of them, I was very much into it because my father, Shalom, was a heavy smoker. And I tried to do everything I could to get him to stop. I stole his cigarettes. I put Tootsie Pops there, a la Kojak, if you know what I'm talking about. I left pictures of diseased lungs on his bed. I did everything I could. Eventually he quit, but unfortunately it's what ended his life many, many years later. In any case, one of these pictures, as I said, was a diseased lung. So you take a picture of a lung of a smoker, smoking heavily. It's a lung. You take it and put it next to a healthy lung, nice and pink, and you look at the smoker's lung. God forbid, it's the way it looks is horrific. If you've never seen it, you want to see it, go online, take a look. Now, forget the lung description. You're going to go to the king, not the Melech Malchei HaMelachim, not Hashem. As a human being alive, you're going to go before a king, a human king. You're going to go before someone who you respect greatly, whether it's the head of state, the president, the prime minister, a king, whoever it might be. And the only clothes you have are filthy. You want to really go before the king looking like that? So what do you want to do? You want to clean them. So there's a difference between a surface stain. There's a difference between that, something that's more ground in, and something that's mamish become part of the fabric. Let's take a look at these 3 steps. Okay. The person, the body needs chibut hakever, which I'm going to just describe very briefly, all 3 of these, so I'm not going to get to depth on anything tonight. Chibut hakever is what happens physically to the disintegration of the body in the grave, but it's more specific than that. We'll see next time. In order to cleanse him and clean him from the tum'ah, from the impurity, shakibel b'hanat olam hazeh, from the hana'ah, the benefit he had from this world, v'ta'anugav mitumat klipat noga v'shedin yehudaim. Those things that were permissible, that he ate, that he only ate for his own ta'ava, that leaves a stain, so to speak, on the guf and on the neshama, and has to be cleaned with chibut hakever. Again, I'm just going to use the term without any real depth right now until next time. Unless he's a person who never had any benefit in this world whatsoever, without proper intention, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, like Rav Yehuda HaNasi, who says that when he died, he held up his 10 fingers. He said, I gave testimony, I never had, even my little finger ever had any complete hana'ah from this world. But what about a person who doesn't know how to learn anything? A person who's an ignoramus, or a person who's a smart person who knows a lot of halacha, but is ignorant in other areas of halacha. And they've done things wrong. These things have made an impression on their neshama. These things have done something to them. And the chibut hakever is not going to be sufficient. What happens there? He has to cleanse his neshama. Again, this is not punishment. This is a matter of cleansing before coming before God. Mituma zo de klipa zo. He has to cleanse himself from that klipa. Al yedei gilgula b'kaf hakela. I'm going to give you a 10-second translation, and it's much longer than this. The concept is basically that the neshama is thrown from one end of the universe to the other end of the universe. With malachim ki'ilu play catch. Chas v'shalom to exactly say it like that, but with the person's neshama for something. Okay, it sounds a little spooky. That's one level. That's the next level down. Aval diburim asurim. But when a person listen to this should scare a person. The diburim asurim, when a person spoke things they're not supposed to say, like stam frivolity or lashon hara v'chayotze bahem, right? Sitting around talking lashon hara is not the first. Chibut hakever doesn't help. The kaf hakela doesn't help. Again, terms we're going to get more into depth next time. What has to happen to this person? This lashon hara, for example, is complete gimel klipot hatmeot. There's no way you can turn that around. The kaf hakela will not properly, completely cleanse that person's neshama. That person has to go to Gehenna, to hell. A person who just wastes a lot of time and doesn't spend their time learning Torah, or not just learning, but osek b'Torah, meaning involved, meaning living a life based on Torah. Also, the kaf hakela is not enough to cleanse that individual. Okay, I'm not going to get any further here. We can talk about Gehinom shel sheleg, the Gehinom that's cold. Okay, let's stop the share for a minute. Because threw a lot at you tonight. One, we finished chapter 7. 2, we gave an overview of chapter 8. And 3, we looked at these very, very cursory level of these 3 different stages that a person goes through after 120 years. Some may need none of it. Some may need a little. Some may need all. I am, Bezrat Hashem, not going to be giving class next 2 weeks. I'm not going to be here. Hopefully, the following week, when I'm back, I'll let you know when my brain re-arrives. We'll have class and we'll go into some depth. I don't want you walking away from tonight frustrated, saying, like scared, oh my gosh, this is what's going to happen to me after 120 years. You got to, as they say, take a chill pill. Explain some of these things. We'll talk about the terminology. And get a little bit more into depth next time. In the meantime, I wish you all a good evening. I wish you a Chodesh Tov. Remember tonight, Wednesday, Thursday, Bezrat Hashem is Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. Tomorrow's Aleph Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. And just wish all of you health, happiness, Kedusha, not Sitra Achra, not Klipat Noga, but working on raising Klipat Noga to Kedusha.
Wow. Thank you.